I'm not sure what made me suspicious. Maybe it was the way Jenna started acting a few months ago. More distant, less affectionate. It wasn't dramatic or anything, but there were little things that didn't add up. Her phone was always face down. She'd leave the room to take calls, even when it was just a casual Saturday. The whole, "I'm busy at work" excuse started getting old. But I didn't want to be one of those paranoid guys, you know? I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was just going through something. But deep down, I had this nagging feeling I couldn't shake. It was a Saturday afternoon when it all came to a head. I was backing up some old photos onto our shared cloud account, something I usually do every few months to clear out space. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. But then, as I was uploading some vacation pics, I saw a folder flash across the screen, labeled Private. It disappeared almost immediately, like it knew it shouldn't have been seen. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but something about it felt off, so I did what any rational guy would do. I restored it. The folder opened to a series of photos. At first, I thought maybe it was just some old pictures from a trip or a memory I didn't remember, but then I saw her, Jenna. And not just Jenna. Jenna with a guy I didn't recognize. They were in a hotel room, sitting on a bed together, holding glasses of wine, looking cozy as hell. I scrolled through more pictures, some of them more intimate than I wanted to see. There was one where she was lying on the bed, half naked, looking up at the guy as if she had no care in the world. The last image was a selfie of them together. They were standing in front of some office building. She was smiling like I used to get her to smile before. But that smile wasn't for me. It never was. I froze. My mind went blank for a moment. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook, but I couldn't stop scrolling through the photos. I saw the evidence right there in front of me. My wife. My wife. The woman I've spent the last 5 years with, the one who promised me forever, had been cheating on me. But the real gut punch was the last photo. It wasn't one of them at the hotel or at some romantic restaurant. No, this one was from her office. The guy was standing next to her at her desk, and they were both looking at the camera, holding a joint selfie. Jenna had her arm around him in a way that was too intimate for just a coworker, let alone someone you were supposed to trust. They looked like they were in love. And I had been the fool, living in a bubble. I wanted to rage, to destroy everything around me. But for some reason, I didn't. Instead, I shut the laptop and sat there, my mind racing. It didn't feel real. It was like I was waiting for someone to pinch me and wake me up from this nightmare. But it didn't happen. I spent the next few hours trying to put everything together. Who was this guy? What was their story? Why did she keep this secret from me? And why was she still pretending like nothing was wrong? I had to know more, so I made a decision. I was going to find this guy. I didn't waste any time. The longer I sat with those photos, the more my blood started to boil. I had to confront this head-on. I couldn't stay in denial, pretending that maybe this was some weird misunderstanding. The evidence was clear. Jenna had been lying to me. My wife, the woman I trusted, had been sleeping with someone else. But I couldn't just go storming in and start throwing accusations around without understanding the full picture. I needed to find out who this guy was, how deep this went, and what exactly Jenna had been hiding from me. I tried tracing the name Otis back to anything solid. Her social media, mutual friends, anything that might give me a clue. But she was slick. There was nothing. So, I decided to go old school. I headed to her work. Jenna worked at a well-known marketing firm downtown. A modern glass building in the middle of the city, the kind of place where every corner felt like it belonged in a corporate brochure. It wasn't far from home, just a quick drive down the highway, but getting there felt like I was heading into enemy territory. It was mid-afternoon, and she should have been in a meeting by now. Perfect time to confront this head-on. I parked in the garage, pacing a little as I tried to figure out what the hell I was going to say to this guy. Was I going to yell at him? Ask him why he was fucking my wife? Part of me wanted to knock him out right there, but I needed to stay cool. I had a plan. When I walked into the lobby, the receptionist didn't even blink as I asked where to find Otis Harding. "Third floor," she said casually, as if this was an everyday request. It felt like a setup, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let fear control me now. The elevator dinged, and I stepped out into the third-floor office area. It was a typical corporate layout. Open cubicles, gray carpet, harsh fluorescent lights. But then I saw him. Otis. He wasn't anything special. In fact, he looked pretty damn ordinary. About 30, short hair, dressed in a bland navy suit. Just another office drone. But something about the way he was sitting there, calm, almost too calm, told me that this wasn't his first time being approached by a pissed-off husband. I walked up to his desk, and his eyes immediately met mine. There was no recognition at first, just a vague look of curiosity. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice a little too polite. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You're Otis Harding, right?" He nodded, looking a bit confused but not immediately worried. "Yeah, I am. But I don't think I know you. Is something wrong?" The hesitation in his voice almost gave me a sense of hope. Maybe this guy didn't know. Maybe he was as much a victim as I was. But I wasn't about to trust anything. Not yet. I crossed my arms, my mind racing. He didn't know her well enough to realize she was married? He looked like a decent guy. Too decent. He didn't seem like the type to cheat with someone else's wife on purpose. But then again, people are complicated. There's always a story behind the story. "You've been seeing Jenna, right?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The words tasted bitter coming out of my mouth. His eyes widened, and his face paled slightly. Yeah. I mean, we've been hanging out. But man, I swear to God, I didn't know she was married. She never said a word about it." I studied him for a moment, looking for any sign that he was lying. His eyes didn't flicker, his body language didn't tense up. He was telling the truth. At least, it seemed that way. I took a deep breath, trying to think this through. Why the hell wouldn't she tell him? Then it hit me. So that's why she always took off her wedding ring before work. I had noticed it a few times before, but I'd chalked it up to her being paranoid about losing it or something. But now, I realized it was a tactic, a way for her to avoid suspicion. She had probably told him the same thing she told me, that she was worried about losing the ring. But there was no way around it now. I had seen the proof. I stared at Otis for a moment longer, trying to decide if I should hit him with the truth or just walk away. His confusion was genuine, but it didn't change anything. He'd been used. But so had I. "She told you she was single, right?" I asked, my tone sharper than I meant. "Yeah, she did," he replied, clearly uncomfortable. "She told me she wasn't happy at home. That things were complicated." I didn't press her on it. I'm not the type to ask personal questions, man. You know? I clenched my jaw. I wasn't angry with him. Not really. He was just a guy caught up in something bigger than he knew. The real anger was for Jenna, the woman I'd shared a life with, who had been lying to me this entire time. I took a step back, shaking my head. "Listen, just do me a favor. Stay the hell away from my wife." Otis nodded quickly, visibly relieved that the confrontation wasn't escalating. "Yeah, man. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't." I turned on my heel and walked away, but not before I gave him one last look. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about Jenna, about what she had done. I stepped out of the building, feeling like I was walking through a fog. But as the door closed behind me, one thought stuck with me. It wasn't Otis's fault. It was hers. And now, I had to decide what to do with that knowledge. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And yet, walking through that door, back into our house, felt like walking into a furnace. I stood there for a moment, just staring at the front door as if waiting for some miracle to change the reality I now knew too well. It was the kind of situation where you wish you could wake up and have it all be a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. And Jenna was still upstairs, likely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. My hands were tight around the steering wheel, my body tense, but it was like I could hear every creak in the house as I made my way to the stairs. I wasn't going to let this go. I couldn't. I heard her voice before I even reached the top. She was talking on the phone with someone, laughing softly. I didn't care who it was. Whoever she was talking to was probably the same person who'd been in bed with her a few nights ago. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach, but I kept walking. I knocked on the door, then opened it without waiting for a response. She was sitting on the edge of our bed, in her usual spot, phone pressed to her ear. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and for a moment, she froze like a deer caught in headlights. "Oh, hey," she said quickly, The smile plastered across her face. What's going on? You're home early. I don't know what I expected her to say, but it certainly wasn't that. I had been prepared for a defensive tone, maybe even some sort of manipulation. But instead, it felt like she was still trying to act normal, like nothing had happened. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the pictures. One after the other, I laid them out for her to see. The intimate shots, the selfie in her office, everything. It was all there. She stared at the phone, her face going pale. Her eyes flicked up to mine, and for a second, I saw the mask crack. But only for a second. Ethan, what is this? She asked, her voice shaky. She wasn't even pretending anymore. She knew. She knew that I knew. Jenna, I said, my voice low, cold, as I threw the phone down on the bed between us. We need to talk. Her lips trembled slightly as she avoided my gaze. I could see her thoughts racing, scrambling for some sort of explanation that might save her. But I didn't need to hear her excuses. I didn't care anymore. I can explain, she stammered, her voice rising now. It's not what you think. I crossed my arms and leaned against the door frame. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Don't even try. I don't need explanations. I don't need to hear you tell me how it was a mistake or how I misunderstood. I took a step closer, feeling the anger rise in my chest. You've been lying to me, Jenna. For months. You've been sleeping with him, Otis, and pretending like nothing's wrong. You've been wearing me out with excuses and manipulations. But now? I paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. Now, I've got everything. The pictures. The proof. She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was thin, fragile. Ethan, I never meant for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I couldn't stop the laugh that bubbled up, bitter and harsh. Oh, but you did, didn't you? You hurt me more than you'll ever understand. You were sleeping with someone else while I was working my ass off, thinking we were good, thinking we were happy. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't interested in her tears. I wasn't interested in her apologies. She could cry, beg, do whatever she wanted. But the truth was out. You lied to me, Jenna, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. For so long, you lied. You told me things weren't working, that you were stressed or busy. And you took off your wedding ring before work, telling me you were afraid of losing it. All that time, you were living some double life. And for what? So you could play house with some guy while I'm stuck here, being the idiot who thought you were loyal? Her face twisted as she struggled to hold herself together. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. Ethan, please. I made a mistake. I was lonely. You never paid attention to me anymore. You were always so focused on work. Enough. I cut her off, my voice sharp. I've heard all the excuses. I'm done. I don't care why you did it. I don't care that you were lonely. What I care about is that you betrayed me. You made me feel like I was the problem when the truth is you've been lying from the start. I don't even know who you are anymore. Her face crumpled, and she dropped her head into her hands, sobbing now. Please, Ethan, she begged, her voice hoarse. Please don't do this. We can fix this. I swear. I'll end it with him. I'll do whatever it takes. I stared at her for a long moment, the sadness welling up inside of me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to go back to the way things were before this. But I couldn't. I knew I couldn't. The damage was done. I shook my head. No, Jenna. This is over. You've had your chance. You've made your choice. Her eyes widened as if the words were too much to process. Ethan, don't say that. You can't be serious. You're my husband. We've built a life together. I know, I said, my voice heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. But the life we built? It was a lie. And I'm done living in that lie. I turned away, my heart breaking. But I knew it was the right thing to do. The only thing to do. Pack your things, I said coldly, my voice unwavering. You've got until morning. The silence between us after I said those words felt like a thick, suffocating fog. Jenna didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at the floor like she was trying to make sense of my decision. But deep down, I knew there was no fixing this. The person I thought I knew, the woman I'd loved, was gone. In her place was a stranger. And I didn't have the energy to try and convince myself otherwise anymore. I left the room, needing space, but I could feel the weight of her gaze follow me as I walked down the hallway. I wasn't sure if she was still in shock, or if she was simply trying to decide how best to manipulate the situation. But at that moment, I didn't care. I went to the living room and sank into the couch, running my hands through my hair, the anger still bubbling beneath the surface. This was my life now. This was how it ended, just like that. All the years of us building something together, creating a home, trying to be the picture-perfect couple, all wasted. It was almost surreal how quickly it all fell apart. One moment, I thought we were good, happy even, and the next? It was like I was seeing the truth for the first time. I kept telling myself I should have seen the signs. The distance, the excuses, the late nights at work, the fact that she barely even looked at me the way she used to. But I didn't want to admit it. Not then. Not when things were still comfortable. I heard the soft shuffle of footsteps behind me, and I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Jenna stood in the doorway, her tear-streaked face an all-too-familiar sight now. "Ethan, please," she said, her voice breaking as she wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I don't know what happened. I was stupid. I should have never." "Enough," I interrupted, my voice like ice. "I'm done listening to your excuses, Jenna. You made your choice a long time ago. I don't care about your apologies. I don't care about how sorry you are now that you're being caught. This is over." Her lip quivered, and I could see the desperate panic starting to creep in. "You're not serious," she whispered. "We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can." "Therapy?" I barked, laughing bitterly. "You think therapy is going to fix what you've done? There's no magic fix here, Jenna. You've broken this beyond repair." She stepped closer, her eyes pleading, but I didn't want to be anywhere near her. I stood up, not wanting to be in the same room with her anymore. "You don't get to pull the 'we can fix this' card now. You made your bed. You can lie in it." She swallowed hard, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. "I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. I was just lost. And Otis, he made me feel good about myself again. You didn't notice me, Ethan. You were always working or distracted. And I thought maybe I wasn't enough for you anymore." I looked at her, that same old excuse hanging in the air like a foul stench. "You think I didn't notice you? You think I didn't try? You think I wanted to work all the time? I didn't ask for this, Jenna. You made this choice. You made it clear when you lied to me. When you decided to fuck someone else behind my back. Don't you dare put that on me." I could see the tears streaming down her face now, her mascara smudged and her makeup a mess. She looked nothing like the woman I had once adored. "You're right," she whispered, her voice hollow. "I fucked up. I'm sorry." I didn't care about her sorry. I was done being sorry. I was done being the one left holding the bag, being the one who was made to feel like I was the problem. "Pack your things, Jenna," I said, the words coming out like a command. "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. Pack your things and leave." She staggered back as if the words physically struck her. "You're serious," she said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You're really throwing me out." I met her eyes with a steady gaze. "Yeah, I am. And I'm not looking back." She took a step toward me, her hand trembling as she reached out, almost pleading. "Ethan, please." I stepped back, shaking my head. "Don't touch me. Just go." Jenna broke down then, sinking to her knees in front of me, sobbing uncontrollably. "I love you," she cried, her voice breaking. "I never stopped loving you. I made a mistake, Ethan. I was stupid. Please, please don't do this. Please don't leave me." But it was too late. Her words were just noise now. I had heard them all before, and they meant nothing to me. I couldn't believe her anymore. "I'm not the one who left you, Jenna," I said coldly. "You left me the moment you decided to cheat. The moment you thought I wouldn't find out. The moment you thought you could get away with it." I turned away, walking to the front door. "Pack your things. I'm done." I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the cold weight of everything pressing down on me. The house felt too quiet, too empty without her, but it wasn't the kind of emptiness that made me miss her. No, it was the kind of emptiness that made me realize how much I had been suffocating without even knowing it. All those years, all that time spent trying to build a life with someone who had never been truly there. I could still hear her sobbing downstairs, her cries muffled through the walls, but I didn't go to her. I didn't comfort her. It was over. She was still trying to piece together her version of reality, the one where she wasn't the villain, but I wasn't going to play along anymore. By morning, the house was eerily silent. The only noise was the ticking of the clock on the wall and the sound of her packing. I couldn't help but picture her, sitting on the edge of the bed, tossing clothes into a suitcase, trying to keep it together. It was pathetic. For a moment, I felt almost sorry for her. Almost. But then I thought about all the things she'd done. All the times she had lied to my face. The times she had kissed me, held my hand, and made me believe that everything was fine, when all along she was having sex with another man. I had been a fool, blind to everything happening right under my nose. But that fool was gone now, and he wasn't coming back. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and drove to the lawyer's office. The thought of facing a drawn-out battle over the house, the finances, and everything we had built together made my stomach churn. But I wasn't going to let her have anything. She didn't deserve it. Not after everything. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Claire, was quick to help me draft the papers. She didn't need to ask too many questions. The anger in my eyes, the coldness in my tone, told her all she needed to know. I was done. There was no going back. "Are you sure about this?" Claire asked as she slid the papers across the desk for me to sign. "Once you file, there's no undoing it." I glanced at her, the weight of it all hitting me again. But my answer was the same. "I'm sure," I said. "This has been over for a while. She just doesn't know it yet." I went back home later that day. Jenna was still there, still moving things around. There was no more crying, just an air of resignation. She had stopped begging, stopped trying to justify herself. I could tell she knew this was it. There was nothing left to say. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. She looked up at me, her eyes red from all the crying, her face drawn. But there was no fight in her anymore. "Are you really doing this?" she asked quietly, her voice hoarse. "You're really going through with it?" I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. My decision was final. She wasn't going to change it. There was no apology, no pleading, no last-minute tricks she could pull to make me take her back. "I already signed the papers," I said, flatly. "It's done." Her face fell, and I could see the weight of it sinking in. She hadn't expected it to end this way. She thought she could cry and apologize, maybe offer some kind of desperate plea, but that wasn't going to work anymore. "You're not going to change your mind?" she whispered, almost as if she was trying to convince herself more than me. "No," I said, my voice sharp. "This isn't something you can fix, Jenna. I don't care how much you cry or beg. You made your choices. Now, I'm making mine." She nodded slowly, her eyes finally filled with the reality of what was happening. The life she had built, the lies she had wrapped herself in, were all coming apart in front of her. It didn't matter how much she loved Otis or how many times she convinced herself that I didn't pay attention to her. The truth was here now, and it was too late to change it. "Then I guess this is it," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The next few weeks were a blur. The papers were filed. The house was in the process of being split. The lawyer was handling all the details, and I was just waiting. I couldn't be bothered to deal with the endless paperwork or the back-and-forth discussions. I knew what I had to do. It was only a matter of time before everything was final. Meanwhile, Jenna had moved out. She found a place across town. Some small apartment I'm sure was way too expensive for her to maintain on her own. Otis had dropped her like a hot potato, the word around the office being that he was done with her as soon as he realized she was married. I wasn't surprised. That's how it always worked, right? She was just a distraction for him, nothing more. And when things got too real, he cut ties. I didn't feel satisfaction, though. Not like I thought I would. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have felt some sense of triumph, watching her lose everything, watching her face the consequences of her lies. But I didn't. What I felt was relief. Relief that I wasn't pretending anymore, that I could move on. I wasn't tied to someone who had betrayed me. The weight had been lifted, even though it wasn't without its scars. But those scars would heal, and I would heal. The only thing left now was moving forward, one step at a time. The days after Jenna left were like a slow unraveling, the tension in the house disappearing but leaving a lingering heaviness behind. The silence felt almost deafening. It had been just the two of us for so long, even if we'd been living in different worlds for months. Now, it was just me. The house seemed too big for one person. It echoed with every step I took. I hadn't spoken to her since the day she packed her things and left. The only communication had been through the lawyer, finalizing the division of property. The house was mine now. The car was mine. Everything we'd built together was being ripped apart, piece by piece, like some kind of ugly puzzle that never quite fit together to begin with. But then came the real twist. The day the papers went through, I started getting calls, texts. Random people in my life suddenly had something to say about Jenna. People who had never once brought up anything personal about our marriage, now acting like they'd been waiting for this moment. I wasn't sure if they were trying to comfort me or gloat, but it didn't matter. Word was getting around, and the story was spreading. Jenna's affair with Otis was no longer just our dirty little secret. It was becoming public knowledge. First, it was a friend of a friend, someone I barely knew who reached out to me, her voice filled with concern. "I heard about Jenna," she said. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I always thought she was a little off, you know? You're better off." Then there was the guy at the bar. I had stopped for a drink to take the edge off, trying to get a moment of peace from the whirlwind of everything. A man I vaguely recognized approached me, and before I could even ask how he knew what was going on, he slapped me on the back like we were old buddies. "Damn, man, I heard about your wife. That Otis guy. She was really into him, huh? You must have been blind not to see it." I didn't know whether to laugh or punch him in the face, but all I could do was nod, a tight smile curling on my lips. "Yeah, guess I was." I took another swig of my drink, trying to keep the anger in check. The thing was, the more people found out, the more the shame I had felt started to fade. Jenna had made it so easy for people to gossip. She had made it so easy for everyone to turn their backs on her, to share their 2 cents, to rip her apart in the same way she had ripped me apart. It felt like revenge, but I couldn't focus on that. I couldn't dwell on what other people thought of her. I had to move on, to focus on myself. But I couldn't help but feel a little lighter when I saw how quickly she was being judged. All the lies she had told, all the people she had deceived, were coming back to bite her. One day, about a week after she left, I saw Otis in a coffee shop. I wasn't expecting it. I'd been going about my day, trying to find a new rhythm, when I saw him sitting at a table by the window, laptop open, sipping his coffee. He was alone, looking almost too normal, too comfortable. Part of me wanted to walk up to him, to confront him, to ask him how he felt now that he had tossed aside the woman who had made him feel so special. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching him, feeling something in my chest settle into a cold, distant kind of calm. He glanced up and saw me standing there. For a second, we locked eyes. And in that moment, I could tell that he knew exactly who I was. He knew what I was thinking. But instead of walking over to me or saying something, he just turned away. And I felt this weird mixture of relief and disgust. I didn't need to talk to him. I didn't need to get any answers from him. Otis was just another casualty in this messed up story, another person who got caught in Jenna's web of lies. But I couldn't help but think how easy it was for him to walk away. He didn't seem affected by the damage. It was almost like he had been waiting for her to unravel. I left the coffee shop without saying a word, the faintest feeling of closure settling in my chest. The real change came when I started focusing on myself. It was like the world had shifted from gray to something more vibrant. I had been so focused on keeping my marriage together, on being the perfect husband, on trying to fix things that weren't broken, that I'd completely lost track of who I was. The first thing I did was start working out again. I hadn't cared about the gym in years, but now, it felt like I had something to reclaim. I needed to take control over my body, my mind, my life. The gym became my sanctuary. It was a place where I could go and just exist without the weight of guilt or confusion hanging over me. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before. Every drop of sweat felt like a small victory. I also started spending more time with friends. Old friends who had slipped away when Jenna and I became inseparable. It felt good to laugh again, to talk about things that weren't centered around her. I started traveling again, picking up on things I had pushed aside for years. I went to a few weekend getaways, cleared my head. The world was still out there, full of opportunity, full of new possibilities. And it was during one of those trips, away from all the noise of the city, that I started to feel the first real flickers of peace. The kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. The kind of peace that didn't need validation or approval from anyone. It was mine, and it had always been mine. I just had to learn to take it back. But even as I began to rebuild, Jenna was still in my head. Not in a way that controlled me, but in the quiet moments. When I woke up early in the morning, or when I was laying in bed at night, the shadows stretching across the room. I found myself thinking about what she was going through, how she was dealing with the fallout. She'd been humiliated in front of everyone. The affair was out in the open. Her friends were turning on her. Otis had walked away from her without a second thought. She was isolated, alone. I didn't feel sorry for her, but I couldn't deny that, deep down, I wondered what she was doing now, what her life looked like without me, without the facade of a perfect marriage, without the lies. I didn't hear from Jenna for a while. In fact, it was almost a month before I got the first message from her. At first, I didn't know what to think when I saw her name pop up on my phone. My initial reaction was to ignore it. I had moved on, or at least I was trying to. I was finally starting to feel like myself again, starting to rebuild my life without the constant weight of her deceit hanging over me. But then I thought, maybe she deserved to say something. After all, she had spent years being part of my life. Maybe I owed it to her to at least hear her out. I opened the message. Ethan, I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to talk. Can we meet? I need you to hear me out. I stared at the words for a long time. The bitterness inside me stirred, and for a brief moment, I considered blocking her, telling her I was done. But something inside me, something colder than before, decided that I didn't need to block her. I could hear her out. I had nothing left to lose. I agreed to meet her the next day. It was a public place, a cafe downtown, one of those places where the noise of other people could drown out anything uncomfortable. I figured it would be easier to keep my distance there. The next afternoon, I arrived early, sitting in a corner booth, nursing a coffee, waiting for her to show up. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I didn't know if she would come in apologizing, crying, or acting like nothing had happened. Whatever it was, I was prepared for it. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She was thinner than I remembered, her face drawn, like the weight of the world had hit her all at once. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was dressed in a way that seemed like she was trying too hard to seem put together. But the sadness was there, lurking behind the facade. She walked over to the table, and I didn't stand up. I didn't offer a hug. I didn't offer any kind of greeting. I just watched her sit down, keeping the distance between us. Ethan, she began, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. I don't know how to start this. I don't know how to make you understand how sorry I am. I stared at her, waiting. The bitterness, the anger, still clung to me. But there was something else now, a numbness, a detachment. She could apologize all she wanted, but nothing was going to change. Nothing could. She swallowed hard, looking down at her hands, which were shaking slightly. I've lost everything, Ethan. Everything. She stopped, clearing her throat. I know you hate me. I know you probably don't want to hear anything I have to say, but I have to tell you something. I raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. I fucked up. I've been trying to figure out why I did what I did. Why I hurt you the way I did. She continued, her voice breaking. I think I was just so lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I thought I could find something in Otis, but he was just a distraction. And when I lost you, it was like the whole world just collapsed. I could hear the desperation in her voice now, the pleading. She was trying to reach me, trying to find some part of me that still cared. But all I could think about was how easily she had betrayed me, how quickly she had replaced me, and how hard it was to look at her now without feeling disgusted by what she had done. You don't get to do this, I said quietly. You don't get to come here, after everything, and expect me to fall for your excuses again. You don't get to make me feel bad for you. You had your chance. You ruined it. Her face crumpled at my words, and I could see the first real crack in her armor. I know, she whispered, almost inaudible. I know, but I don't know what to do now. I have nothing. Otis won't even talk to me. My friends are gone. My family. She stopped herself, wiping away a tear. I've ruined everything. I've ruined me. I watched her for a moment, feeling nothing but a cold, aching emptiness. I didn't want to feel sympathy for her. I didn't want to care. But a part of me couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Not because she deserved it, but because she had let herself fall so far. She had made the decision to betray me, and now she was the one left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. You want sympathy, Jenna? I said, leaning forward slightly. You want me to tell you everything is going to be okay? That we can fix this? Because I'm not that guy anymore. You destroyed me. You destroyed everything we had. And now, you want me to feel sorry for you? No. You made your bed. Now lie in it. Her lips trembled, and for a second, I saw the old Jenna, the one I had fallen in love with, flicker through. But that was gone. She was gone. I didn't think you'd ever forgive me, she said, almost to herself. I didn't deserve it. But I thought maybe we could talk. Maybe I could try to make it right. I shook my head. There's nothing to make right. It's too late. This is over. She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to find something in my face. Some trace of the man she had married, some glimmer of the person who would have taken her back. But I wasn't that man anymore. I couldn't be. I don't know what to say, she whispered, standing up slowly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I ruined it. I stood up as well, my posture stiff. You're right. You did. She didn't say anything else. She just walked away, leaving me alone at the table, the weight of her absence pressing down on me. As I watched her leave, I felt nothing. And that, I realized, was the final step. I had let go. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't hurt. I was free. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.